Well, this year we got a few promotions going on for combines and headers, and we got some packages we got put together for you guys to save you some money. And anytime that we inspect a combine for you, or if you have something you want replaced on the combine, you can just come in, or we can go over it with you at the inspection, give you a price quote on the total cost it's going to cost you to do it, so you know up front what it's going to cost you. Or let's just say you had like the feeder house floor you wanted replaced, you can just come in, talk to Gary or one of us, we'll get you a quote together, and then you'll know how much it'll be if you want us to do it or not. I'm just going to hit on a few key areas that do wear on the combine that are a good thing to check. And any of these, if you decide to look at yourself at home and you find it, we can bring it up, we can fix it or whatever. Or these are some of the things that we check, but at the shop, if we do an inspection, we do a 300 plus inspection on the combines. So it's a pretty thorough inspection. This is just a quick look over of major things. So in this feeder house area, you can check to make sure that your chain is running true all the way across. We do have some that have skipped before because people don't keep the tension on properly on this side. When you look in there, there's a tensioner in here and you want to run a little bit past the indicator. About half your wash should be past the indicator. And you want to look in here on the feeder house floor. This is a key wear area. It'll wear right through. And then back farther too, that also floor. And then underneath there's a little seal before the rock trap hinge door. Make sure that ain't wore through so your grain don't fall through it. And then every year change your reverser oil. It's really cheap insurance to do that. It only holds 4 quarts of oil. You don't have to worry about dumping the cooler out. That's just a quick thing you can do. And then we'll go over to the other side here. The vertical auger here, a good spot to check is just kind of take a pry bar. And there will be a little bit of movement up and down here that's kind of normal, but if it's excessive, it's something that should be looked into before the housing gets ate out and you have to buy the whole new housing, bearings and all. But if this bevel gear moves back and forth, then your housing's already ate out. And then a good thing is to check, swing out the auger and then make sure that your flighting's good, it's not sharp or wore down. And then when you run it, it shouldn't howl too bad or have a lot of vibration in this area, then we know we have an issue. And then you also, a good thing to do is to shift your rotor into neutral and then check all your separator tines back here, make sure none of them are broke off or wore down past the point. We sell a little tool you can come in and get. And then if you do have some trouble with breaking a lot of cobs and have issues with your corn getting separated out properly, you can move these spacers down in these separator grates. And that'll move it about another 3/4 inch to an inch down. It just gives a little better sample. And then you're going to want to check all your thrashing elements while you're in here too. Make sure none of them are broke or worn. And then you can put in whatever concaves you got. And they're also, we sell all these closure plates you can snap in for different crops. And one good thing, if your concave's never been leveled, that is well money spent. You get more of your grain out of the field. It's gonna perform better. The combine's gonna run smoother. You're gonna save on fuel. And it's not a very long job to do. It may only take about an hour to do. And that's something we can do for you too, or help you through and talk to you about how to do it, and it's in your operator's manual. Got all your key bearings, you're just going to want to check them like normal. Grease it, check all your key belts. And then back here on the chopper, on the PowerCast tailboard, you're going to want to make sure that these aren't wore down. You're going to check them and replace them if they are wore. And then you also see there's these added plates back in here. If you're getting really, really heavy residue getting blown out to the outer edge of your header where it's already been cut, you take these out and more crop will get spread into the center and you get a more even spread. Especially for no-till conditions, it's nice to have a nice, proper, even spread. So you keep that all covered out. And then check your hammers in here, make sure they're not worn, rusted, or whatever. And then the bushings also wear too, so when you replace these hammers, put in new bushings with it. And you can also still check your knife bank. If they're worn, you get to flip them once. And then we'll go over to the other side here in a bit, but for right now, if you have a newer, I think it's like a 13, 14, or 15 combine, they have that dual zone shafter in the back, and that gets set to 5 millimeters for all crops. And that'll give you a way better sample. A lot of guys think they need to open up more, and actually it causes more problems. On this side, a good thing to check would be your elevators. Make sure that the sprockets are good. If they're worn, probably should get them replaced. Check the tension. If you keep a nice proper tension on them all the time, so it'll last longer. Make sure you don't have any missing paddles or anything. And then you also want to check any of the drives over here, bearings, make sure all your belts are good, your bearings and such. And up here is your new side mount moisture sensor if you have a newer style. You can pull the auger out if you want to make sure it's clean. If you have the grain tank style, a good thing to do would be to pull that plunger off in the end and make sure it's all nice and clean inside there before the start of the year, so you know it's going to work properly. Here we're going to show you how to check the final drive to make sure that the bearings are tight. First of all, you want to check the oil level in it at the start of every year and grease it until the grease comes out of the seal and the housing here. And then after that, every couple days, just give it 15 pumps of grease. You can't over grease it. And a good important reason why we want to check these once a year is the bearings do get loose on them over time, and if you catch it early enough, then all we have to do is either we can go in and tighten it up or put brand new bearings in it before you have a failure, which could cause you having to buy a housing or a whole complete final drive. And now we'll show you when we drop it down, where you feel is right in here in between the seal and the housing to check for any movement. And if you can feel it moving there, or if it pinches your finger, you know you got a problem. Just take it off, bring it up to us. We got tools to split it apart and see what you need to replace it. In this one right here, I didn't feel no movement, so this one's good and tight. Now you just go over to the other side, do the same thing.
Hi, most of you know I'm Tom Osterman. I work at the parts department at Larson's. I'm sure many of you guys are already familiar with our bulk delivery for oil, antifreeze and such. We also have large tanks. Our newest stuff, probably for a lot of people, especially in the diesel stuff, is our net fluid, which is going to be more increasingly popular with the newer equipment. We got it in sizes ranging from 2.5, 55s, and 270 for this one. We also have all the equipment to handle it. Depends on your needs.
This year we're going to have a couple different combine optimization packages. The more inexpensive one is the combine optimization before field startup that we come out and do. And basically we'll come out and we'll set up your display. We'll check, make sure your combine's set up for the right crop, your drum height, stuff like that. And then we'll check for any codes you got stored in there and check to see if you have any software updates. And if they need to be done, that'll be up to you if you want us to put them in or not. And then we'll check for any visual leaks around the combine on anything. We'll do a quick walk around. If you have your shields off, removed for us prior to us getting there, we'll check to make sure that you have that your head actually calibrates. If you have it hooked up, we'll go through the whole calibration procedure for you, make sure nothing's out of sync there. And then once the optimization is done and completed, if you'd like us to fix anything while we're there, we can do that right then and there, and we won't charge you for the service call going out there and back. We'll just charge you for the time that we spent. And then the more expensive package is the Encompass 360, and this package is more intense. It includes a pre-season premium inspection with oil scans, machine controller software updates, AMS software updates, training at the location by several of our knowledgeable staff, variety locator setup, the machine optimization and startup for one crop. And that includes calibrating of the header, the concave, leveling the concave for you, and sieve, chaffer, feeder house, grain loss, yield, and proper settings for the crop, like your drum height. We'll go through and set all that stuff and make sure it's all done properly for you. And then we'll also provide you with phone support and a loaner combine at a reduced rate within 24 hours of a major breakdown. Here we're going to go over a few things on a walker machine. First of all, you got RAS bars and concave on this. That's a little bit different than your loader. You're going to want to take the covers off up top and look here, make sure your concave isn't bowed or warped. Make sure all your bars are good, not rounded over. And then make sure your RAS bars are good, so that way it feeds in good, tracks your grain properly. Here we're going to talk about the straw walkers. It's really good to check to make sure that you don't have any cracks on your walkers. Right here where this main structure mounts on, check. A lot of times there'll be crack going back here. And you're going to want to check the back of the walker and the front of the walker. We've had a lot of walkers break in the past, and it's a good thing to make sure that they're structurally sound so we don't have one walker fail and cause the next one to fail. Then you're also going to want to check the blocks on here. If you got a really excessive side movement or tipping on it, like these are getting pretty worn, you might want to go to the wood blocks. There's a company called Lowell that makes them. We can put them on without having to replace the crank. If we put these John Deere ones back on, we'd probably have to replace the crank and the blocks. And we get a lot of questions on greasing them. What I say is to grease it every day. And you'll take this grease zerk right here, and let's say this one takes 15 pumps before it just starts to squirt out of here. I would give 15 pumps then to this one and all the rest of them. So then you do them equally, and then you don't have grease falling down all over on you.
Here at Larson's, we've got a new exciting tool, a grease gun and a grease fitting, which is a perfect combination for when this happens with a regular grease gun. You go to grease and it won't take. Pretty soon you got a big mess, and we've all been there before. I'd like you to show you this new grease gun. It's from John Deere. You can adjust for more volume or more pressure. I've got this set for high pressure, not so much volume, and also a lock and lube grease gun tip in combination with that. Try and get that on there. All right, we got her on there now once I use my left hand like I'm supposed to. And we'll give it a shot here. And like I say, I've got it set at low pressure and high volume. As you can see, the tip is not coming off, and it is taking grease. Not a lot of grease with each pump, but it's much more pressure. All I got to do to release it is unsnap it and take it off, and we've got grease in that location that never took grease before.
We're going to talk about the 635 and the 640 flex drapers, some preseason checks and maintenance you can do to them. Basically, there's a lot of gearboxes on here, so you're going to want to make sure you check the oil on them. Up in here, you got your auger drive and your center draper drive gearbox. Check the oil level on that. And then you got your main gearbox here that drives the whole header. Check the oil on that. And then you got a slip clutch back in here. You're going to want to grease that. That drives over to your center auger and your center draper belt. And then up here, if you look, there's a shield here you can slide back. And then there's a slip clutch in here to lube up to, and that's what runs your knife drive on both sides. The shaft goes all the way across. And then all your U-joints here, the shafts have grease zerks on them. You can grease for where it slides in and out. Here we got your draper motor, and you got your gearbox. You can just remove the plug, check, make sure there's oil in there. It's acceptable to have it run out a little bit. Here we're going to talk about your belt tension. On your side belts, at the end of the season, you want to loosen it up back here to the red so you don't have tension on it to prevent them from stretching out. And then before you start the season, you want to put it right here in the center of the green. And the same is for the other side. Now, to adjust your belt tension, right here is the adjustment screw. That will take a 24 millimeter. And you just adjust it until it's in the green on the other side. And here is your knife drive driven gear case up here. There's a dipstick up top, and you want to check these gearbox oils with the header up. There's also a grease zerk here on the drive shaft here, and there's also a gearbox in here, the knife drive one. You can check the oil on that also. Right here's the center belt adjusting screw. It takes a 24 millimeter socket, would be the easiest to get in there. And at the end of the season, you just back this up. I usually back it up a couple turns, and then before you start, just run it all the way into this head is flush with this plate of steel right here. So as right now you can see it's backed off for storage. Here on the reel you can grease the center here, and then both ends there's a grease zerk. Then on the reel you're also going to want to check your reel bushings, make sure none of them are broke, or if you got a lot of play in there, you might want to try a new one, see if that is a lot tighter. They got a newer style on these ones that's supposed to hold up better. And then on your sickle, you're going to want to take a business card, slide it underneath there, and then you're just going to go and you're going to adjust this back bolt, which is a 10 mil, to tip it down onto it, so that way you get a good scissors action between the sickle and the guard right there to cut it off nice. In the center, the same thing. You just run your business card in here and adjust this down, because this center piece right here is rigid, so you don't have to worry about that flexing in there. And then at the end of each day, you might want to go and look at this center belt drop the pan, clean the dirt out of it, and then along here make sure no crop is wrapping around in here and stuck in this roller in the front and the back here. Kind of seems to be sometimes an issue. Just walk around and check it over and keep it nice and clean, and you'll like the head. Thanks. Here we're going to talk about some adjustments on a 630 and 635F flex platform. And some things you can check would be the auger fingers here if they're worn. If they're worn just a little bit, you can flip them, save some life on them, or you can just replace them. And then make sure that the bushings aren't too worn out where the fingers ride in. Then you're also going to want to check where the auger fingers come down to the floor and meet. Right here where it comes right off the stainless, you want to make sure that's no less than 5/8 of an inch. So it's set them. I usually set them about 3/4 of an inch, give you a little more play just in case you hit something hard, you don't knock out all your fingers and wreck your floor. And you're also going to want to adjust the strippers on here. Basically what you do is first you set this auger so it's an 1/8 inch off your front stripper if you have one, and then 7/16 off the floor. And then you can come and set this back stripper so when you raise the header all the way up, set it so that this auger flighting misses this rear stripper by 1/8 of an inch. On the right hand side of the header here, you got these 4 nuts here you can loosen up. This is where you adjust your auger finger clearance to the floor. Just loosen them up, take a crescent wrench, turn this back or forward, whichever way to extend them or retract them. On the left hand side here you can check your drive belt, check the idlers, make sure they're good, make sure your chain tension is adjusted properly on your chain, and also your belt tension is adjusted. And then you can also check, there's this little spring down here, and that controls the arm that runs all the way across the whole side of your header, and that keeps it down tight onto your flex arms. So that keeps your header height sensing working properly and fast. And then you're also going to want to grease this knife drive gearbox here, and that you give it 10 pumps every 200 hours.
Hey, it's Tom here again. Just gonna let you guys all know we got our bulk sale going on for your flex heads, sickles, guards, reel fingers, skid shoes, stuff like that. Some of you already know we do have a miscellaneous kit for hardware, bulk stuff. We're also kind of starting to do a spin-off of that now. We're gonna do a flex head repair kit. It's gonna have your common wear items in it. Just a couple of each, like guards, skid shoes, rivets, splice kits, whatnot in there. If you have any questions, just come on down to the parts department and give us a shout and we'll hook you guys up.
Here we're going to talk about some checks you can do on your chopping corn head, and some of these checks are the same on a regular corn head. First of all, you're going to want to check your gathering chains, make sure that the tension here, there isn't a gap any bigger than the thickness of those washers, so this one can be tightened up some. And a good thing to do to make these chains last longer is to flip them every year. So you're done at the end of the season, loosen them up, flip them over, just side to side. This one will go over on there. And then you're also going to want to make sure to check your guides along here, make sure they're not wore through, especially along here. You'll see they'll wear through, then you want to replace them. Then you can check your deck plates in here. You can see how when the corn comes in, it starts to really start to groove it in right here. When it gets a little too excessive, it's a good time to replace it, and even check back here too for excessive wear. And then you can also check the grease level on an older chopping corn head. You remove the dipstick here, pump grease in here until it comes up to the acceptable level on the dipstick. And on a newer one, the gear case actually holds oil in it, so you just have to screw the plug out and check the oil level on that. Since we're talking about oil levels, the chopping corn head gear case has the front part of the gearbox has the oil level right here. You just pull the plug out, except we'll have a little bit to run out. And the other plug's on the back side of this gearbox back in here. If you have the header raised up all the way, safety stop up or down, then you can crawl in there, remove the plug, and check out each and every one of them at the same time. Then you want to check your chopping knives here. Make sure that they're not too worn. If they are, flip them. But when you flip them, check them, because they get a lot of wear in them, in and out. And actually, the bushing's getting bad, and it also eggs out the knife. So it might be better just to replace them so you're not throwing knives out in the field all the time, causing a lot of vibration on the gearbox. And then since you're in here looking, we got a lot of sensors on these heads now. We got row sense sensors, and we got height sensors. You want to check these harnesses that are in here. And like, if they're sticking out a lot, just shove them up inside the snout itself. And then make sure that they're all fastened correctly. You can check them here. And then up in here, make sure that the critters didn't chew them apart. It's pretty famous, the mice like to get in there. And then make sure your header calibrates when you hook it up to your combine. Make sure everything calibrates right and all the sensors work good. Then you should be good to go. Here we got a few things you can check underneath the head, but before you do that, make sure you raise up the feeder house all the way and put the safety stop down. And then you come under here, then there's grease zerks on these slip clutches. I grease them before the season starts and about halfway through. You can give each one of them about 10 pumps if you want on each clutch. You don't have to grease all of them all the way around. Whichever one shows up closest there, you can just grease that one. If you catch two of them, you sure can do that. And then make sure that on each one of these gearboxes you don't have an oil leak, because that could cost you a lot of downtime. You're running out of oil in the season. And then we also got here is the auger drive chain and the clutch. You can grease this clutch beginning of the season and halfway through, and then make sure you got the proper chain tension on it. The tensioner is right above here. You just loosen this top bolt and then loosen the one right on the tensioner itself, and then just push it down. Here we got the main chain drive, which is an oil bath drive. If you take this cover off right here, you can check the condition of your chain and adjust the tension of it. And then right here is your oil plug on it to check to make sure that it's full. It's just a good idea if you want just to change it every year. It only holds a couple quarts, real easy to do.